Put down that weapon! Now! The young security guard's voice was sharp with borrowed authority, but the old man on the bench didn't even look up. He just kept cleaning his rifle with steady, patient hands. What the guard didn't know, what nobody in that quiet retirement home knew, was that this 83-year-old man had a past so classified, even the Pentagon had tried to forget it. When he mocked the engraving on that rifle and tried to take it by force, he triggered something he couldn't possibly understand. 20 minutes later, 2 unmarked black helicopters descended on that peaceful courtyard. Elite soldiers emerged, Delta Force operators. A 2-star general stepped out, walked straight to the old man, and snapped a salute so sharp it seemed to cut the air. This is the story of Thomas Bradley, the man who wasn't supposed to exist. "Sir, put that weapon down. Now." The voice belonged to a young man who'd never learned that authority and arrogance aren't the same thing. Thomas Bradley, 83 years old, didn't even glance up from his work. His weathered hands moved with practiced care across the walnut stock of the rifle resting in his lap, the oilcloth creating soft whispers in the afternoon quiet. He sat on a stone bench beneath the old oak tree in the courtyard of Meadowbrook Senior Living, the kind of place where scheduled bingo nights and manicured lawns replaced the chaos of the outside world. Sunlight filtered through the leaves above him, warming his shoulders through his faded denim shirt. For a moment, just cleaning this rifle in the peace and quiet, he could almost forget the weight of the years. But peace never lasted long, not in his experience. "Did you hear me, old-timer?" The security guard, his name tag read Brandon, stepped closer, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel path. 25 years old at most, with the build of someone who spent more time at the gym than anywhere that mattered. His partner hung back a few steps, an older man named Carl, who looked distinctly uncomfortable with the whole situation. Thomas finished his careful stroke along the barrel before finally looking up. His blue eyes, faded but still sharp, took in the young man's aggressive stance, the hand hovering near his belt, the practiced sneer of someone used to feeling important. "It's a beautiful day," Thomas said quietly. "I'm just maintaining my equipment." "The humidity isn't good for the metal," Brandon let out a harsh laugh. "The humidity?" "Listen, Grandpa, I don't care if it's snowing in July. Community rules are crystal clear. No firearms in common areas. Now I'm going to ask you one more time, and this is your last warning. Put it down." Around the courtyard, other residents had begun to notice the confrontation. Mrs. Henderson paused her daily walk, clutching her cardigan closer. Mr. Yamamoto looked up from his gardening, concern crossing his weathered face. This was supposed to be a place of dignity and peace, not conflict. Thomas's gaze drifted to the rose bushes, to the carefully maintained flower beds where residents spent their mornings. "This rifle hasn't been fired in 50 years, he said, his voice carrying the patience of a man who'd explained difficult things to difficult people before. "It's more of a historical artifact at this point than a weapon." "It's a gun," Brandon snapped, his ego pricked by the old man's calm. He was used to residents who apologized, who shuffled away embarrassed. This quiet defiance was new, and it irritated him like sand under his collar. "And you're a resident, which means you follow the rules. No exceptions, no excuses." He stepped forward, his shadow falling across Thomas and his rifle. "Now hand it over before I have to take it from you." Carl finally spoke up, his voice low. "Brandon, maybe we should just—" "Stay out of this, Carl." Brandon cut him off without looking away from Thomas. "This is about maintaining order. We let one person slide, and next thing you know, we've got chaos." Thomas carefully set aside his cleaning cloth and placed the rifle on the bench beside him. He didn't hand it over. Instead, he reached for his back pocket and pulled out his wallet, flipping it open to show his resident ID. Brandon snatched the wallet from Thomas's hand, a gesture so disrespectful that several watching residents gasped audibly. He studied the ID, then began rifling through the other compartments with invasive curiosity. "What's all this old junk?" he scoffed, pulling out a faded cloth patch with an unfamiliar emblem. "You collect Boy Scout badges or something?" Thomas's eyes hardened. Just for a second, the calm surface cracked, revealing something cold and deep beneath. "Put that back," he said, and his voice had changed, not louder but different, harder, the voice of a man who'd given orders that meant the difference between life and death. "Or what?" Brandon challenged, emboldened by his audience. He felt the eyes of the other residents on him and mistook their shock for approval. He leaned down, squinting at the rifle's receiver. "What's this scratching here?" "Phantom unit," Silent service. What is this, some kind of gun club? Did you old guys get together and play soldier? He reached out and ran his finger across the engraving, smudging the oil Thomas had so carefully applied. That touch crossed a line Thomas couldn't articulate but felt in his bones. For just a moment, the courtyard disappeared. The manicured lawns became dense jungle. The warm sun became suffocating heat. The smell of roses was replaced by cordite and blood. He saw a face, young, barely 20, with eyes that had seen too much too soon. He heard words whispered in the dark. Go, Tom. Don't look back. Just go. A boy named Miller, who'd made sure Thomas lived while he didn't. The memory lasted less than a heartbeat, but it left echoes. Thomas's hand shot out and gripped Brandon's wrist, not violently but with shocking immovable strength, the kind of strength that comes from decades of hard living and harder choices. Brandon yelped and tried to jerk away. He couldn't. You're assaulting an officer. Let go of me right now. You will not touch this rifle again, Thomas said quietly. It's not yours to touch. Across the courtyard, a visiting granddaughter named Lisa had seen enough. She'd come to visit her grandmother in the memory care unit and was cutting through the grounds to her car. She'd watched the guard mock the old man, grab his wallet, disrespect his possessions. Her own father had served in Vietnam. She recognized what she was seeing, the violation of something sacred. While Brandon was struggling against Thomas's grip and Carl was trying to mediate, Lisa pulled out her phone. She didn't call 911. She didn't call the community office. She scrolled to a number she'd saved 2 years ago at a veterans support conference, a direct line to a colonel at Fort Bragg who'd told her, if you ever see a veteran being wronged, call me. Day or night, she'd never imagined using it. She pressed call. Colonel Morrison's office. This is Lisa Chen, she said, her voice tight. I met the colonel at the Gold Star Families event in 2022. He told me to call if I ever saw something wrong. What kind of situation, Ms. Chen? I'm at Meadowbrook Senior Living in Fayetteville. Security guards are harassing an elderly veteran. One of them grabbed his personal belongings, mocked his service, and is trying to confiscate his rifle. The old man's name is Thomas Bradley. She paused, trying to remember what the guard had read aloud. And the rifle has an engraving. The guard said it says, Phantom Unit, Silent Service. Dead silence on the other end. For 3 full seconds, nothing. Then, repeat that name. Thomas Bradley. And the engraving. Stay on the line, Ms. Chen. Do not hang up. The voice had changed completely. All professional detachment gone, replaced by urgent intensity. Where did you say you were? Lisa repeated the address. She heard muffled shouting in the background, then the voice returned. Keep watching, Mr. Bradley. Is he safe right now? The guard is trying to handcuff him. The old man isn't resisting, just holding firm. Help is coming faster than you can imagine, Ms. Chen. Just keep your eyes on him. In a windowless operations room at Fort Bragg, a meeting about logistics came to a crashing halt when the door burst open. A colonel, his face drained of color, stood in the doorway. General Hayes, sir, he said, breaking every rule of protocol. We have a situation. General Michael Hayes, a man known for keeping his composure under artillery fire, fixed the colonel with a look that could melt steel. This had better be about an imminent invasion. Sir, we have a civilian report from Fayetteville. An elderly man named Thomas Bradley is being detained by private security. He took a breath. Sir, they're trying to confiscate his rifle. A rifle engraved with Phantom Unit, Silent Service. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. General Hayes's face went absolutely still. Those words, that unit designation, belonged to ghosts, to legends whispered in the darkest corners of special operations history, to men who weren't supposed to exist. He stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. Everyone out, he commanded. Colonel, you stay. The room cleared in seconds. The general took the phone. This is General Hayes. You've done well, Miss Chen. Just keep watching, he handed the phone back. Get me real-time satellite. Scramble the QRF Delta Force operators. 2 birds, no markings. I'm going with them. Sir, for a civilian dispute. That man is not a dispute, General Hayes said, his voice deadly quiet. That man is living history. Get those helicopters in the air or find a new career. Back in the sun-drenched courtyard, Brandon had finally pulled free from Thomas's grip. He had handcuffs out now, dangling them like a threat. That's it, old man. You're going downtown. Assault on a security officer resisting, disturbing the peace. Carl put a hand on his partner's shoulder. Brandon, this is too far. Let's just call the police. I am handling this. Brandon shoved his partner aside and reached for Thomas. Then the sound came. It started as a distant rhythmic thumping, barely audible over the birds, but it grew and grew, a deep, chest-vibrating thunder that didn't belong in this peaceful retirement community. Every head turned skyward. 2 black helicopters, sleek and unmarked, were descending on them at impossible speed. They bypassed the hospital helipad down the road and came straight for the facility's great lawn. The rotor wash hit like a hurricane, sending hats flying, whipping clothes, turning the peaceful afternoon into chaos. The helicopters hovered 10 feet off the ground with breathtaking precision, ropes deployed. Men in gray tactical gear descended with fluid predatory grace, hitting the ground and fanning out in a perfect perimeter. They moved like a machine, efficient, silent, terrifying. From the lead helicopter, a single figure emerged down deployed steps, tall, silver-haired, wearing an unmarked operational uniform. But he carried himself with such absolute authority that even the watching residents stood straighter. General Hayes strode across the lawn, his eyes locked on Thomas Bradley. He walked straight through the perimeter his men had formed, past the gaping security guards, past the stunned residents. He stopped 3 feet from Thomas. His gaze fell to the rifle on the bench. He leaned down, reading the faint engraving, and his stern face softened into something like wonder. He straightened to attention. His hand snapped to his brow in a salute so sharp it seemed to cut the air itself. "Mr. Bradley," his voice rang out over the dying rotors. "General Michael Hayes, United States Army. It is an honor, sir, an absolute honor." Thomas looked at the general, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He gave a slow, tired nod, a king acknowledging a loyal subject. The general held his salute for a long moment before lowering his hand. Then he turned to address the assembled crowd, his voice taking on a formal, almost ceremonial tone. "For those who don't understand what they're witnessing," he began, "let me be clear. You are in the presence of a legend, a man whose name exists only in the most classified archives of our military history." He gestured toward Thomas. This man, Thomas Bradley, was part of a special operations unit that, for all official purposes, never existed. The unit that would later evolve into what you know today as Delta Force. He was one of the originals, the Foundation. They operated during the darkest days of the Cold War in places that will never appear in your history books. They prevented wars you never knew were about to start. They saved thousands of lives, maybe millions, and received no recognition, no medals, no parades. He gestured to the operators standing at attention. "The men you see here, Delta Force, the most elite soldiers in the world. They walk the path this man and 7 others carved out with nothing but courage and sacrifice." His gaze fell on Brandon and his voice hardened. "That rifle is not just a gun, it's a relic of American sacrifice, one of only 8 rifles commissioned for his unit. The engraving on it was their motto, Phantom Unit, Silent Service. Because officially they weren't there. They didn't exist, but they were there, and thank God they were." A profound silence fell over the courtyard. The residents looked at Thomas, this quiet man they knew from bridge games and Sunday dinners, and saw him truly for the first time. The general turned his attention to Brandon and Carl. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You," he said to Brandon, "are a disgrace to that uniform you wear. You mistook age for weakness. You mistook silence for submission. You put your hands on a man who has more honor in his little finger than you'll accumulate in a lifetime." He paused. "Your company's contract with this facility is under review. My review. You can expect a call." Before he could continue, Thomas raised a hand, a quiet gesture that nonetheless stopped the general mid-sentence. Thomas stepped forward and looked at Brandon, whose face had gone pale with fear and shame. "He was just doing his job, General," Thomas said gently. "Little too much vinegar, not enough honey, maybe. But he's young. We were all young once, full of fire, certain we knew everything." The grace in that moment was overwhelming. Thomas's simple act of mercy was more powerful than any condemnation. It showed the profound difference between them. One was a boy playing at power, the other was a man who'd wielded true power and learned the value of forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, changes rippled through Meadowbrook and beyond. The security company implemented veteran sensitivity training. Brandon was let go. Carl was promoted for trying to de-escalate. But the most remarkable change happened about a month later. Thomas was sitting in his usual booth at the local diner, enjoying coffee and apple pie, when the bell over the door chimed. Brandon walked in, no uniform now, just jeans and a faded t-shirt. He looked thinner. The arrogance was gone. He saw Thomas and froze. Then, taking a deep breath, he walked to the booth. He pulled a $20 bill from his pocket and laid it on the table. "That's for your pie, sir," he said quietly. "And your coffee. I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong. I was an idiot." Thomas looked at the young man, at the genuine remorse in his face. He pushed the 20 back across the table. "Keep your money, son," he said, gesturing to the empty seat. "Sit down. Tell me about yourself." Brandon hesitated, then slowly slid into the booth. And there, in a quiet diner on an ordinary Tuesday, two men who'd been on opposite sides of a confrontation found something unexpected: understanding. Because that's what real strength looks like. Not in the loudest voice or the biggest display of force, but in the quiet dignity of a man who's walked through hell and came out the other side still believing in second chances. The heroes among us don't always look like what we expect. Sometimes they're the quiet neighbor who never talks about their past, the elderly person we walk past without a second glance, the veteran sitting alone on a bench, maintaining a piece of history with gentle, practiced hands. If this story moved you, honor the veterans in your life today. Listen to their stories. Respect their sacrifices. Remember that beneath the gray hair and the quiet demeanor might rest courage you can barely imagine.